Well, alright, welcome back to Should Be Paul Berlino here, and well, it's time for a Ranking the Albums video. And the reason why it's time for this Ranking Albums video is because I'm doing Jefferson Airplane, as you read below, and well, I'm doing Jefferson Airplane right now because today, January 30th, is Marty Balin's birthday. It would have been Marty Balin's 80th birthday. And I love Marty Balin. I love Jefferson Airplane. And I decided I really wanted to make this video to celebrate Marty. I mean, he's one of my favorite singers. I think he's underrated. I think he's an underrated vocalist, an underrated songwriter. I think Jefferson Airplane is an underrated band. And as you can see here, I have the full 8-album Jefferson Airplane discography behind me here. Yes, including the 1989 album. And I have them in chronological order. You'll see there's no indication back here as to how I've ranked them. Okay, now I've been into Jefferson Airplane since I was in high school. I got into them. I mean, I knew about them since way before I was ever into them, as you do, because they had Somebody to Love, they had White Rabbit, but I had older music people in my life who made me aware of these things, who had albums like Surrealistic Pillow and stuff. And, I would see these records and I would just be like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. But I wasn't really interested in listening. By the time I was in high school, I was really, really into 60s stuff. I mean, I was so, obviously the Beatles had long since been a favorite band of mine, or my very favorite band, but I had long since loved the Kinks and the Who and the Rolling Stones and just all, I was completely, just a complete 60s guy, right? Now, in 1987, the 2400 Fulton Street double album comp was released. I'll show it right here because I don't have a copy here. But when that came out, I was so completely just forehead deep, or even higher, in loving everything 60s and checking out all the bands and buying whatever, like buying Moby Grape or whatever it was. And I just hadn't really dug into Jefferson Airplane yet. And that comp piqued my interest. I decided, you know what? I'm going to buy this. I decided I'm going to buy this record, and I picked up that album, and that was it, man. That was the gateway drug. I absolutely ended up getting so heavily into it, and that is the catalyst for me being a Jefferson Airplane fan today, was that comp. And I do still have the one that I actually bought in 1987. I just don't have it here. But I do have my proper discography, and well, why don't we get started? But actually, before I get on with the actual ranking, I do have a runner-up. Early Flight. Yeah. I just don't have a copy of that here, and I was considering it actually putting it on the list, but it's a record that was released in '74 made up of entirely unreleased material. Different stuff from the sessions for these albums, and I think it's a really great record. I mean, I think it's actually better than some of the actual albums. So I toyed with putting it on the actual list, and I thought, no, I'm going to keep it to the legit albums and just put as a runner-up Early Flight. All right, so coming in number 8. All right, coming in number 8, I you care to take any guess as to which one of these albums I would have at the very, very bottom of the list, huh? I bet you think you know. I bet you think you know exactly which album I would have at the bottom, because what other album would be at the bottom of this list, right? Well, you're wrong. It's not that one. Believe it or not. I have it number 8. Yes, that's right. I have it number 8, Long John Silver. I have the 89 self-titled above Long John Silver. Believe it or not. There are people who right now who are just tearing their hair out. They're completely yelling at the screen. What the fuck are you talking about? Yep. At the very bottom. Well, okay, well, here. Time to stop pretending I'm cool here, and I have to put on my glasses so I can read my notes. But yeah, Long John Silver, this is their last album of their initial run. This is their 1972 final album before the reunion in '89. And honestly, I mean, this record is it's formless, it's meandering, it's perfunctory, unmemorable, sometimes outright bad. It's one of the most phoned in albums I think I've ever heard in my life. No matter how many times I've listened to this thing, and I have had this record since I was a teenager, and I put it on I don't know how many times trying to connect with it. Every time I put it on, I immediately forget the songs. I don't really like them while they're on. That's the thing. It isn't even just an unmemorable thing. I don't really like any of it. It's almost entirely Grace on vocals because, I mean, everything was just falling apart because Marty had left the band, and they just, like, nobody cared anymore, and it just showed. And this is like the Monkees' Changes of Jefferson Airplane. Really. And initially, when I drew up this list, I had the 89 reunion album at the bottom because, yeah, just without thinking, you're like, well, yeah, of course, that's at the bottom. But then I went back and I listened to this, and I thought, you know what? There are reasons to put this above the 89 album, but I can't. I honestly think this is a worse record. And, yeah, there you go. Number 8. Okay, it's coming in number 7. You guessed it, the 1989 Jefferson Airplane reunion album. Yeah, it's a self-titled album. And, you know, having just gotten into them really only a couple years prior, in 1987 when the comp came out, I was ripe. I was ripe and ready for like a new Airplane coming out in 89. Like, they reunited and were going on tour and they had a new album coming out. I was absolutely freaking out. I couldn't believe it. And I was so excited. And, you know, Planes started playing on the radio, and I loved it because I thought, yeah, this sounds amazing. This sounds like Jefferson Airplane. I mean, it sounded current. It didn't sound like a throwback. It just sounded like Jefferson Airplane as they should sound at that moment in time. So I bought this record the day it came out and rushed home to listen to it. And boy, did I hate it. Oh, man, did I hate this record. The only song on it that sounds like a Jefferson Airplane song is Planes, the opening track, and all the rest of it just sounds like, you know, just sounds like adult contemporary, late 80s adult contemporary. It's like all keyboards and, you know, it's just, it doesn't sound like Airplane. I mean, so it was produced by Ron Nevison, and Ron Nevison is the guy who had done, like, well, he'd done the early 80s Jefferson Starship albums. He'd done Modern Times and Nuclear Furniture, and he did Freedom 0.0 and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, he'd done all the mid-80s Heart records, all the big MTV Heart records, and he'd done Kiss Crazy Nights and Damn Yankees, and he did those god-awful 90s, like early 80s, like late 80s, early 90s Chicago records. Yeah, that's the guy who produced this record. So if you haven't heard this, that's what this record sounds like. It doesn't sound like Jefferson Airplane. It sounds like one of those records with Jefferson Airplane on vocals. Now, you know, every song kind of seems to be piano-based. Well, piano. It sounds like an electronic keyboard of some sort of a synth. And, you know, you look at the credits, and Grace is credited as playing keyboards, but then you look a little further down in the credits to the additional players. It's like, oh, there are 3 other keyboardists. So Grace is probably, you know, tucked under in the mix on like 2 songs or something. Not because she wasn't capable of doing it, but because with these kind of productions, they don't favor, you know, actual members of the band playing on the records. So, you know, they always have to have like 3 other additional guitar players who are pro, you know, and keyboardists and all that kind of stuff to fill it out, to sweeten it and all that kind of crap. That's the kind of record this is. And, you know, I mean, in some places it practically sounds like a Belinda Carlisle record. But, I mean, now, I guess I should get to why I put this above Long John Silver. Well, one thing, you know, is all the stuff that I mentioned when I was talking about Long John Silver. That record is just formless and forgettable, and just like, sounds like they're making it up as it goes along. And I do prefer that warm early 70s sound production that it has, obviously over the production on this. But in the end, this won out of the two because this record has songs on it. I don't like the songs necessarily, and I don't like the production, but this record sounds like they put some effort into it. This record sounds like they tried. Whatever they may have gone for, whatever they've done, however I may feel about what they did, it sounds like they actually gave a shit when they made this record, even though it sucks. Okay, so coming to number 6. Bark. Yeah. Don't worry, it's not going to all go like in chronological order in reverse. It just looks like that at first, but yeah, Bark. Yeah, I mean, let's face it, the post-Marty stuff is the weakest. Now, I don't think this is a bad album. I think this is 10 times the album that Long John Silver is, and really then the self-titled is as well, but it still is missing so much. I mean, Marty not being there is like... Yeah, they just sound like they're completely lost on this. And, you know, there are songs on it that I really like. I really like When the Earth Moves Again. Feels So Good, you know, Yorma track is pretty good. I really like Crazy Miranda. That's one of my favorite tracks. Pretty As You Feel. That's a weird single for those guys, but I kind of like it. Wild Turkey and Lawman may be my favorite track on the record. Rock and Roll Island, I was never a big fan. Now, the thing about this record, it's mostly pretty decent to pretty good, except tracks 9 and 10. Never Argue with a German. Never Argue with a German If You're Tired, or European Song. And 10, Thunk. Come on. I mean, they would have been better off just... Now, see, the thing is that when they went in to record this record, Marty was still in the band. He quit the band basically just when they started to make this record, and he had songs slated for it. Emergency was gonna be on there, Up or Down, which is on Early Flight, and something else. I forgot the name of it, but whatever. Yeah, he had songs slated for this, some of which they recorded, and they should have just put those songs on the record instead. I mean, really, instead of Thunk. Come on. I mean, they could have approached this the way the Byrds did Notorious Byrd Brothers, how they kicked out David Crosby, but they still put his songs on the album. That album needed those songs. Well, this album needs Marty's songs. Now, the Marty songs that were slated to be on here, I don't think are really that great. But again, I repeat, Thunk, it would have elevated the album a bit. And Third Week in the Chelsea, well, you know, whatever. And I do know that this thing originally came with the paper, you know, the grocery bag cover with the JA logo on it. I do have one with that cover, but I just don't have it here. That's my mantra. I have it, but I don't have it here. You're going to hear me say that 1,000 times. This is like a dollar bin copy that I bought just to show in this video. And but it has the insert. It has 2 inserts, and I have the tracks here because, of course, the back cover doesn't have the tracks. But anyway, Bark, number 6. Okay, so coming in number 5 is my least favorite of their best albums. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, this is my least favorite of their best albums, all right? Crown of Creation. Yeah, I like Crown of Creation. I think Crown of Creation is great. I just out of as far as basically the Marty period, the original Marty period, I just like all the other ones better. Now, the thing about this record is that I don't know, there's something about it that I never really connected with on the level that I did all the other albums that I have above it. There's so many great songs on it. I mean, it's a pretty tight album, compared to the previous album, After Bathing at Baxter's. I mean, it's a lot more, there are a lot more songs on it. And, it's well written, it's well produced, it's, well arranged. It's a pretty tight, solid record. There's something about it that I just don't love as much as the albums above it. But there's all kinds of stuff on this album that I love. In fact, the first 3 tracks on this, I mean, we have Lather, In Time, and Triad. Honestly, that is a 1-2-3 punch that I don't think they equal anywhere else in their catalog. As far as an opening 3 songs, this is the best opening 3 songs in their entire catalog. Now, if you want to get into the best opening 2 songs, Surrealistic Pillow has the best opening 2. But if you're gonna go for 3, this one. Yeah, the thing is that after those 3 tracks, the opening 3 tracks, Lather, In Time, and Triad, set a certain tone for the record. I mean, that all 3 of those tracks kind of have a similar mood, and it's just this really just dreamy, slow, psychedelic, trippy, man, sort of mood that I really love, and I get so caught up in the feel of all 3 of those tracks that once they're over, the album kind of just completely changes after that. It goes somewhere else entirely, and I'm never ready to follow the album where it goes after that. So that's one of the reasons why I think I never really got as much into the album as a whole, because it's just, I find all I really want is what's going on in the first 3 tracks. Now the problem with this record is that after those 3 songs, I'm not as interested. This Star Track, it's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the track. It just doesn't get me. It just doesn't really get me. I'm not passionate about it. Now, Share a Little Joke, I don't like much. That's a Marty. Star Trek is the Ormus track. Share a Little Joke is a Marty track, and I love Marty, but I think that's probably the weakest track on the record. Well, except for Chishingura or whatever, the Spencer Dryden track that ends side 1, which is just him making noise just so he can get publishing money, I guess. I don't know. But side 2, I think, is actually a lot more solid, or it's more consistently good than side 1, even though all the bangers are up front on side 1. If You Feel is great. The title track, Crown of Creation, is actually one of my favorite songs on the albums as well. Ice Cream Phoenix, Greasy Heart, a great Grace track, and of course the epic closer, House at Punil Corners, which, of course, I believe is about the Jefferson Airplane house at 2400 Fulton Street, and this is the era when they bought that house. They bought it just ahead of the production of this record. They had their studio in there, and that's where they got together and wrote all these songs, and yeah, I mean, it's a great album. Probably, I think this is this is my second favorite Jefferson Airplane album cover, but this is a great album cover. But as far as the discography goes, merely at number 5. Okay, it's coming to number 4. Number 4. From 1969, Volunteers. Yeah, this is their 5th album, Volunteers. And man, this is really a favorite. I mean, I toyed with putting this up higher because I've always really, really, really loved this album. And but I had to have a real heart-to-heart with myself and really, get real. And well, merely at number 4. I used to have this. There was a time when this was my favorite one. And there was definitely at least a time when it was the second favorite. But, where it stands now is 4. And I don't like it any less than I ever did. I absolutely love it. I think I have just even more appreciation for certain other records that are above it. Now, this is actually one of the very first, or one of the very earliest 16-track recordings. So this was a hi-fi album for the time. But it also was a very controversial album at the time because, obviously they have, the revolutionary, anti-war lyrics and stuff, and of course that was a big pearl clutcher back in the late 60s. But also, they just outright cuss on this record. I mean, the opening track, We Can Be Together, obviously the infamous line, "Up against the wall, motherfucker." There's that. And you have Eskimo Blue Day, where Grace says, "Doesn't mean shit to a tree," repeatedly. I mean, that line comes up again and again in that song. And, well, at first, RCA wasn't going to let them do that, but then they had to actually remind RCA that they'd actually allowed the cast recording of Hair to say fuck and all this kind of stuff, and they caved, and they let Jefferson Airplane do it. And yeah, I mean, and what a record though. I mean, this has so many great songs. We Can Be Together, Good Shepherd, Yorma vocal, The Farm, Hey Frederick is one of my very favorites. Hey Frederick, take 2. Hey Frederick is it's like a 9-minute track, a 9-minute Grace Slick epic that's just gorgeous. And side 2, Turn My Life Down, great Marty Balin track. Wooden Ships, which is probably my favorite song on this record. It's kind of a tie between that and Hey Frederick, but in the end I would have to choose Wooden Ships. Eskimo Blue Day, which is another great one. Volunteers by Marty Balin, great track, and that's of course the title track for this record, which Marty wrote because he woke up one morning on Fulton Street and looked out the window and there was a Volunteers of America truck outside, and it just, in the opening line, "Look what's happening out on the street," just came to his head, and then the song pretty much wrote itself from there. But the problem with this record is that it has A Song for All Seasons and Meadowlands. Meadowlands is okay. It's just kind of a link track. It's not really an offending track. It's just not substantial. But A Song for All Seasons if there were tracks in place of those two that were on the level of the rest of the album, ooh, man, I don't know. This album could potentially be, I don't know if it could go to number one, but it would definitely be number two. But yeah, Volunteers. And I mean, let's see, what else do I have here? I have notes, and I might be forgetting something, and I don't want to forget anything. No, that's basically it. I mean, Wooden Ships, as most people know, is a David Crosby song that he co-wrote with Stephen Stills and Paul Kantner. And so Crosby, Stills, and Nash got the song, and Jefferson Airplane got the song. And I can't say which one I like better. I think I kind of like them both. They're both great versions. So I can't, But Volunteers, absolutely phenomenal record. This is not your 1985 Starship. I'm telling you this. All right, so coming in number 3. The debut, Jefferson Airplane Takes Off from 1966. Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, shit. Now, I really love this album so much that initially when I drew up this list, my initial sort of, early draft of the list, I had this at number 2, because that's how much I love this album. But in the end, I had to kind of reevaluate and think things over and kind of give an overall kind of consideration of this and that and kind of go, it has to go to number 3. But I love it more than being merely at number 3, but it had to be at number 3. Now, this record, this is, of course, their first album before they had Grace Slick. They had Sidney Anderson on vocals before Grace. Grace was in the Great Society at the time, working that same circuit there as they were. And the Jefferson Airplane was basically the first big band out of the whole San Francisco scene. They practically created the San Francisco scene. I mean, it was Marty Balin who opened up the Matrix, which kind of really started, which was a huge part of starting that scene. And he and Paul Kantner got together and formed this band. And Marty's the one who started the band, but then he got Paul Kantner, and the two of them kind of buddied up and did the rest of the work there. And but I mean, by this was in '65. By '66, they're signed to RCA and they have this record out. And what a record! I mean, it's minimal on covers. '60s debut albums are usually pretty. Usually a lot of covers, and there are covers on this record, but not nearly as many as a lot of these kind of albums. I mean, this has Tobacco Road, of course, because you just had to have Tobacco Road on your album at the time, and it has Let's Get Together, Come On People Now, Smile on Your Brother. And what else? I mean, is there anything else on here that's a cover? Those are the two most obvious covers, but yeah, I mean, it's mostly original material, and it's such great stuff. Blues from an Airplane, Let Me In, Bringing Me Down is pretty good. It's No Secret, one of the singles from the record, absolutely great. Soaring Marty vocal on that. Run Around This World. Now, this is a 2005 reissue of the original mono version. Thing is that when they put this album together, they ended up having to censor it because RCA wouldn't let them. Well, they couldn't have Running Around This World on this album because they said something about they used the term trips, and well, you know what that means, and so couldn't have that. Song got dumped. But Let Me In and Run Around had lyrics that RCA found problematic, to use modern jargon, and so they had to change a couple of lines in the songs. Like Let Me In has Let Me In, You Know Where, and RCA knew where, so they had them change that line. Run Around is another one. Yeah, so basically it ended up they had a censored version of the record that is the most common version, but there are early, extremely rare copies that have 12 tracks, including Run Around This World, and have the original lyrics. And those are very, very, very tough to get, but fortunately in 2005, Sundays put out this really great reissue of the mono mix of the album, completely original and uncensored as intended. But I do actually have an original mono uncensored copy. But as you can see, it's not exactly in beautiful condition. I mean, the covers, look how, paint on it. There's spray paint up here, and the back's really dirty and crappy. The spine's actually not bad, all things considered. split scene. You know, it's a really crap copy, but I bought it just because of what it is. The record is playable, but I would say it's a very low VG copy of the album. Now, I have a question about this, though, for all you airplane geeks, all you pressings geeks, all you Discogs geeks. Now, this copy here, on Discogs, it says that the original one, the original uncensored, has in the matrix here, it has at the end of the serial number has 2S. Well, mine has 1S, and I don't see 1S listed in Discogs. Maybe I'm overlooking it. Maybe I'm not looking hard enough. I don't know. But this is an uncensored, and it has a 1S at the end of the serial number and not a 2S. What pressing is that? What is that? Does anybody know? Any of you geeks know? If you do, let this geek know. Yeah, see, this is a really trash copy. So anyway, so enough of the geekdom here. Now this album, one of the things about it is that one of the reasons why I put it down lower is probably partially to do with the fact that it has the covers that I don't like, and I'm not really that big on Chauffeur's Blues. Now, if I was going to, I think, put together sort of my own custom version of the album, like what I would consider really the optimum version of this album, I would, of course, Let Me In and Run Around as they should be, and leave on Run Around This World. But I would dump Tobacco Road, and I would dump Let's Get Together, and I would dump Chauffeur's Blues. I would include It's All Right and High Flying Bird, which are two songs that they had from the time that didn't end up on the record. I think those would be way better for the record. And yeah, there you go. That's just my 2 cents. But yeah, Jefferson Airplane takes off. I think it's one of my favorite debuts by one of my favorite bands. I think it's just it's one of their more underrated albums, and I love it. All right, so coming in number 2. Surrealistic Pillow. Yes, I put Surrealistic Pillow merely at number 2. I know a lot of you would have it at number 1. A lot of people would have it at number 1. A lot of people, this is the only one they know. This one has the big hits on it. This has Somebody to Love, it has White Rabbit, and a lot of other great, she has funny cars. She has funny cars. I would say she has funny cars, but she has funny cars. Today, Coming Back to Me, DCBA, How Do You Feel, Embryonic Journey, Plastic Fantastic Lover. I mean, it's an absolutely plastic fantastic album. And of course, this is the big breakthrough. This is the big Airplane breakthrough, and this is the first album with Grace Slick. Signe Anderson decided to leave the band and, kind of become a family person. I think she had a kid, right? And she just decided that she needed to do that instead of doing this stupid band thing that wasn't going to go anywhere, right? And yeah, so she left the band, and they had a couple of farewell shows in one night. They were doing 2 shows a night back in those days, and they did 2 shows at the Fillmore in October '66, the farewell to Signe shows, and then the very next night, Grace did her debut at the Fillmore, and boom, everything exploded, because she brought with her the 2 big songs that would basically make the Airplane a household name, right? And but this record, it's probably the number 1 record of all of the San Francisco, that sort of mid-'60s San Francisco scene. This is pretty much the epitome of that, right? And Jerry Garcia was on hand, of course, for these sessions, and he was there arranging and guidance, and he was a spiritual advisor as well, apparently. And apparently they say he played on the record, but people, some people say he did, some people say he didn't, some people say he played on this song, some people said no, he only played on that song. So we don't know what he did or if he did anything, but he was at least there doing drugs with them. We know that much. Oh, and he's also responsible for the title, Jerry Garcia. Jerry Garcia described the music as surrealistic as a pillow is soft. And they took that line and went, oh, we have an album title there. So Jerry did do that. That is not disputed. But my favorite song on this record, my number 1 favorite song on this record, easily, is DCBA 25. If you watched my track versus track between this and After Bathing at Baxter's, you already know this. But yeah, on an album full of stone cold classics, DCBA 25 is a dark horse track that I absolutely adore. One of my it's one of my very favorite Jefferson Airplane songs. Obviously, this is one of my favorite Airplane albums. I mean, I have it at number 2. Yeah, like I said earlier, I almost put Takes Off above this, but I had to really kind of sit and think about it. And there are a lot of songs on Takes Off that I love more than a lot of songs on this album, but I had to kind of give it a big picture kind of thought. I really love the vibe and the feel and the atmosphere of that album, but I really love the vibe and the feel and the atmosphere of this one even more. Now, a lot of people complain that it has too much reverb, and, well, anybody who says that has only heard the stereo mix, because that's in the stereo mix. If you like this record or would like this album if it wasn't so drenched in reverb, get the mono mix. The mono mix, which this is a mono cover, and I have it in a frame because it lives on the wall over here. You don't see it in the videos, but it lives right there on the wall. Yeah, get the mono mix because it's much drier and it might suit your needs a bit more. But now it's not a perfect album. I would dump My Best Friend, and I would put Go to Her on this if I had my way. Go to Her would be on here instead of My Best Friend. Man, if that was the case, woo! I mean, this is already an absolutely amazing album, but whew, yeah. Into the stratosphere with it, if it did that. Surrealistic Pillow. Okay, so coming to number 1. I mean, obviously you have it all figured out if you're following along and you know the discography. Yep, that's right. After Bathing at Baxter's is my favorite Jefferson Airplane album. Now, the thing about this record is that, I've mentioned that pretty much all these records have a track or two that I don't really like that I would dump in favor of other tracks. Well, this one is no exception. And frankly, the track that I would dump from this is Spare Change, like the 9-minute, improvised psych freakout that I think is completely boring, frankly. And I have never, ever gotten into that. And I really, if I could make this record my way, or sequence it and and curate it, I would dump Spare Change and I would put Things Are Better in the East on here. And there's probably something else that could go on. I can't think of what it might be, but yeah, Things Are Better in the East at very least would go on here in place of Spare Change, but that would only be a fraction of that. So maybe they would have to have a couple of other great songs, but that would make this album only better. But man, this is definitely like their psychedelic freakout album. And in fact, the title, After Bathing at Baxter's, is Airplane band code for After Tripping on Acid, because Baxter's was the word that they used. Like that was the code word for acid. So After Bathing at Baxter's means after tripping on acid. Now this record sounds more like it's during tripping on acid. Yeah, it's absolutely just a freak out of a record, but it's my favorite one. I mean, I love all these songs the most, pretty much, out of all the collections of songs that they have. Ballad of You and Me and Punil, opening track, incredible. Small Package of Value will come to you shortly. It's just like a insubstantial little link track. But then you have Young Girl Sunday Blues. Great Marty song, great Marty performance, live. That is a live performance that they put on. I talked about this on my track versus track, so if you watch that, you know this, or you may have already known it anyway. But that is a live performance that's brought on here, and it's just so good. It's recorded so well, and it's performed so well that it sounds like a studio track. Absolutely phenomenal. Martha, the single off the album, that didn't really do much, but it should have. It's one of their best songs. Wild Time, like a great, just like rockin' tune. Last Wall of the Castle, like a great Yorma track. Rejoice, the side closer. Love it. Watch Her Ride, Spare Change. Two Heads, and Won't You Try, Saturday Afternoon. This is absolutely an amazing record. I love this album. Yes, I have to skip 9 whole minutes of side 2, which is nearly half the side, but that's the thing about this record, is that all the other stuff on it is so damn good that even with a 9-minute chunk of this album being a complete waste to me, this is still my number 1. That's how much I love this stuff. Okay? And this is the mono mix. This is the mono version of the album. and which I don't know which one I prefer. I mean, usually it's you definitely, like with Revolver, you're like, oh yeah, I definitely want the mono of that, or Sgt. Pepper or whatever. With this, I kind of like both. They each kind of have a little something to offer. But the mono is pretty good of this record, but you also got to have the stereo too. You just have the record. If you don't have it, have it. All right. After Bathing at Baxter's. All right, so there you go. That is my ranking of the Jefferson Airplane albums in honor of Marty Balin's 80th birthday. Happy birthday, Marty. And as you know, as I'm recording this, yesterday, I'm recording this on Sunday, the day before I'm putting it out, or should be putting it out if I get it edited in time. Yesterday was the day that Paul Kantner and Signe Anderson died. They both died on the same day. Not just the same date, but the very same day, which was absolutely crazy. And yeah, I mean, I was so bummed to lose Paul Kantner, and then to lose Marty. I mean, Jefferson Airplane is down to Hot Tuna with Grace Slick. I mean, basically, that's it. Everybody's gone. Spencer's gone. Yeah, I mean, that's basically down to, obviously, Skip Spence has been gone for decades. But man, what a band. I really just, I think they're so underrated, but in a way, I kind of hope they continue to be underrated, because I don't want, like, you know, the cool crowd to get all into them, and, you know, they have potential to maybe make it annoying, and I don't want that to happen to Jefferson Airplane. You know, kind of like what they do with, like, you know, the Velvet Underground and stuff like that. They kind of make, yeah, you know. But anyway, but yeah, you know, like I said, I've loved the Airplane since I was 17, and, you know, really got into them in the late 80s, and luckily, oh my God, I was there when they reunited in 89. Got to see them twice on that, you know, on that tour. I saw them. Yeah, I saw a regular show on the 89 tour, and then I saw them. They did a free show in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco in 89, and I was there. And I've talked about this before. If you've heard me blabber about this before, I apologize, because I always go on about this, because to this day I still can't believe I saw this. I mean, Jefferson Airplane on 89, as terrible as that record was, the shows were absolutely incredible. They sounded great, and they looked like it was 1989. You know, Grace Slick's up there, you know, in a shoulder pad. Like, she looks like she's going to go, you know, go to the office, basically, with her shoulder pads. But they sounded phenomenal. I mean, they came out and they opened up with She Has Funny Cars right into Somebody to Love, and they played these songs just the way they should be played. No meandering 1968, you know, alternate jammy kind of arrangements. They just played them the way you heard them on the record, and they were still young enough to be able to pull it off. They had their voices were still strong, and yeah, I'm so excited to this day that I got to see that. And my friend Brent and I, now if anybody who watches this channel regularly saw the video that I just put out a few days ago, where my friend Brent sent me some AC/DC records. Well, my friend Brent and I, the guy who set the AC/DC records, we went to San Francisco in 1989, and we went to the Jefferson Airplane house. Post a picture right here. This is a picture of us standing. There we are, standing on the stoop of the Airplane house in 1989. Yeah, you'll notice I'm wearing my little bird's glasses that I'm wearing at the beginning of this video, and that I'm wearing right now. Yeah. There you go, right across the street from Golden Gate Park. It was actually take two. It was absolutely amazing. So there you go. All right. So anyway, thank you everybody for watching these videos. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. And if you do subscribe, click the little bell, because, you know, notifications. And like and comment and all that kind of stuff. Let me know, how do you rank the albums? What do you think of the 1989 reunion record? Did you see any of those shows from 1989? Hell, did you see them in the 60s? I mean, you know, let me know. Let me know what's going on. And yeah, that's that. Come back on Thursday, because Tommy Von Voigt and Crystal Duran are going to be back, and we're going to be counting down our favorite singles from 1994. Yes, singles of the year 1994. We'll see how it goes. All right. See you guys later. Have a cup of tea? very British of me when we're going to San Francisco here, but, you know. And I don't have flowers in my hair or anything. Whatever. Give me a break. Okay, where was I? Marty Balin. So I was saying something about Marty Balin. Yeah, Marty Balin is one of my favorite vocalists, and Jefferson Airplane is a band that I've always loved, and I think Marty Balin I think he's overrated. Okay, shit.